Yeah, what was that group again now? Tom? Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Nous sommes ici ce soir pour célébrer la carrière et les accomplissements de Kevin Lynch. J'ai préparé quelques remarques. Malheureusement, M. Chrétien a déjà prononcé toute mon allocation, mais apparemment, il a reçu 15 minutes, j'ai 4 minutes. Alors, je peux arrêter maintenant. No, but in looking, I looked at the list of all of the people that are going to pay tribute to you this evening, Kevin, and it struck me that it was clear that none of them had worked as closely with Kevin for as long as I had. I mean, my hair was brown when I started working with Kevin, because it started that day in November 1993 when I became Minister of Industry. He was at first my associate deputy minister, and soon thereafter became my deputy, and that continued until March of 2000 when he went to the Department of Finance. I've never quite forgiven him for that. But then again, there was a Sunday afternoon when unexpectedly in June 2002, I joined him at the Department of Finance. We worked together until December 2003. In all, that was 8 years less 2 months. Now, I challenge the public service historians in the room to find as long a pairing of a minister and deputy as that in modern times, other than Hacker and Sir Humphrey. I'll return to that thought in a moment. That day in November 1993, in our first cabinet meeting, and this, having heard what Mr. Chrétien said, this won't surprise you, he told us, I guess I'm breaching some law or something, they can take me away afterwards. He told us in cabinet, listen, you have to work closely with your deputy. And he said that you should realize that your success as a minister depended upon their success, and their success as deputies depended upon your success. Just what he said tonight. Back at Industry Canada, an hour or so later, I met for the first time with Kevin and with Harry Swain. Kevin took me through a PowerPoint deck on innovation and the Canadian economy. I know that will be a shock to those of you in the room who know Kevin. But I swear it's true. I've forgotten everything in the deck. But I do remember that in that meeting I took 2 key decisions. And you've got to remember, this meeting, I still had no political staff at all to protect me. I had to think for myself. Something I've avoided doing. So I accepted their advice on one thing, which was to cancel a huge science project called KAON in Vancouver, and I didn't accept their advice to roll back funding for the Palladium in Ottawa. I also remember 2 other pieces of advice they gave me. One was to go out and get the book of the British TV series Yes, Minister. And secondly, that I should not accept to meet with a certain German businessman named Schreiber. Now, both of these were good pieces of advice. But the decision to cancel KAON turned out to be one that Sir Humphrey would have described as courageous, Minister. It quickly earned me a reference in the Vancouver Sun as, quote, an Ottawa lawyer, 2 of the most pejorative words in the English language, end of quote. So, bruised by KAON, I knew that Kevin hailed from Cape Breton Island and that he had a love for that beautiful part of Canada. I know, therefore, that he was always grateful, I'm sure to this day, to me, that I appointed him to the board of directors of one of my crown corporations, the Cape Breton Development Corporation. It gave him opportunities to return to Sydney, where he was sometimes met by grateful trade unionists anxious to thank him for his public service. Now, Early on in the government, in the summer of 1994, I was visited by the clerk of the Privy Council, Jocelyn Bourgon, and I was told to prepare the government's plan for growth in the economy. I remember that she met with me in my office in the Confederation building, and she told me what high expectations the Prime Minister had of my department. The PM gave a speech to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in September, at which he spoke about the two important tracks that we were going to go down: deficit reduction and economic growth. Well, I was just too inexperienced at that point to ask the clerk what resources my department would receive in order to fulfill this important mandate that the Prime Minister expected us to fulfill. The answer was soon to come. In the budget in 1995, when, as the Prime Minister noted, we lost half of our funds. Meanwhile, it fell to Kevin to produce what we called the Orange Book, while Finance was producing the Purple Book. The colors clashed. It was called Building a More Innovative Economy. Now, if you want to see innovation, you ought to look at that book, because that was an innovative effort for sure. We had to cut and paste an agenda that cost next to nothing. In fact, it cost negative, because we had to cut our spending as well. But that was when I first saw Kevin's talented hand at work. Over the next few years, he was the driving force behind what really did become an innovation strategy. The Information Highway, Connecting Canadians, the R&D Review, the Canadian Foundation for Innovation, the Canada Research Chairs Program. When our portfolio expanded in early '96, the M&A people were working all night on that one, to include the regional development agencies, plus Kevin's personal favorite, the Enterprise Cape Breton. Kevin established a system of portfolio management that enabled him and me to have the ability to provide a sense of common purpose across our 15, or perhaps it was 17, departments and agencies. Now, I like to think that the expansiveness of the industry portfolio in those days was the best possible experience for a future clerk. However, unlike Yes Minister, Sir Humphrey made it to the top and Hacker didn't in my case. But I consider the 10 years that I spent in cabinet to be the richest and most exciting of my life, and I'm very grateful to Prime Minister Chrétien for the opportunities that he gave me. But his advice on November 4th, 1993 was correct. If I can be seen to have been a successful minister, then in no small measure it was due to the work of my outstanding deputy through 8 of those 10 years. And finally, might I say that I am quite convinced that over the past 15 years that I've known Kevin, there is no Canadian, whether elected or not, that has given more hours of service to Canada. Kevin and Karen, a grateful nation, owes you an enormous debt of thanks. Merci. C'était 4 minutes et demie. Moving on with the program for the evening, I'd like now for you to turn your attention to a tribute video for Kevin, which features several highly regarded Canadian leaders who recognize the value of celebrating excellence in public service. The video.